So my name is Patrick Redding, game director on Splinter Cell Blacklist at Ubisoft Toronto.
گفتی اونجا چی کار داشتی؟
جدی کجا پیداش کنم؟
Murdering dog. Wrong answer.
So, and as with all Splinter Cell games, there may be a small number of moments dictated by the narrative where the player is required to take a certain approach, albeit stealthy or lethal or what have you. But for the most part, the systemic gameplay is something that the player can choose to tackle either in a stealthy way or in an action way, either in a lethal way or a non-lethal way.
Are there many situations where I can opt to avoid combat entirely?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think as a general rule, when we look at the way the level design is being carried out, I mean, obviously it's difficult when you only have seen the demo, where we have a very specific walkthrough that we do, but when we hand the controllers to someone else, they can elect to try to avoid those conflicts, and if they're good, they can succeed at it. So as with any Splinter Cell game, there is a challenge in being stealthy and undetected, and there are advantages to being stealthy and undetected, and it's certainly a valid option that's available to the player. And we give them tools to do it if that's the way they want to do it.
Hey.
Huh?
We went out of our way to make sure that there were missions that put the emphasis on stealth, and then there were other missions that put the emphasis on combat, but that it was never 100% one or the other. There might be occasional moments in the game where you need to go undetected, but we didn't want to create a lot of situations where it was like an instant fail if you got detected. Just as we didn't want to create conditions where we pre-detected you, with the AI, we wanted to always have situations where the player had that as an option. And I can say that hasn't changed. Like in terms of the blueprint of the game, that's still our intent, and obviously as we're going through and refining it, we'll work towards that.
So why did you choose to demo the game with this then, like a really big action-heavy one?
That's a really good question, and I think the important thing to remember about E3 is that you're always out to make a splash. You're out to kind of put your mark and make sure everybody sees you in the backdrop of all of these other games that are out there. And so we kind of needed to go with something that was a little bit different, a little bit explosive, and yeah, maybe even a little bit controversial in terms of the context of the franchise. So we went with something that showcased exteriors, it showcased daylight, it showcased more concealment than maybe outright stealth, and it showcased a wide range of Sam's abilities, including some things that were fairly aggressive. That was something we deliberately set out to do because, frankly, we needed to start that dialogue by reaching out to people who maybe had never even played Splinter Cell and needed to be given a reason to at least notice us. We know that we're going to have the conversation with more established fans and fans of stealth play, and we definitely have a lot to talk about with them about that exact subject, and we'll be doing it in the coming months.
Truck is targeted. On your go.
As the leader of the newly formed 4th Echelon, Sam can now call the shots directly from the battlefield.
Copy.
It's a really important point for us that Sam is being put in a position where he's trying to stop a valid threat that's been it's a certifiable and authentic threat that it promises to do a lot of damage and a lot of harm. And so when we're choosing scenarios in which he needs to go in and engage enemies this way, we don't do it lightly. And not all of them are interrogations in the sense that you saw here. Some of them are moments where he needs to identify somebody in order to be sure that he's got the right guy.
Right.
And so those kinds of tight, close quarters interactions can encompass a lot of different forms. This particular one, yeah, it was an interrogation. It was definitely sort of similar in vein to some of the things we saw in Conviction. We draw the line, obviously, we'll never inflict this gratuitously. You're never going to be doing this to somebody in a situation where they don't have something that they can do to alter the outcome of, for example, the terrorist attack. That's something where, that's a choice that Sam has to make, and the exact way he leaves that that person at the end of it is entirely up to the player. And I mean, I think the counterbalance to that is that we are also letting the player experience the flip side of this. Like, in other words, because Sam is in control and in charge, and because there's entire sections of the game, you know, there's a whole layer of the game, in fact, that's spent just managing 4th Echelon and dealing with the other people who are part of 4th Echelon. He gets to experience their reactions to this as well, right? As a human being, he gets to deal with the attitude of of Grim and some of the other people in 4th Echelon who we'll be revealing soon, and they may take issue with the way he approaches it. Some of them may advocate a more extreme approach, and some of them may not be comfortable with the techniques that he's using. You know, but Sam doesn't get a free pass on this. You know, he's making the call and he's setting the tone, in fact, for the way the rest of the organization operates. So one of the toughest things for us to show people and have them experience, you know, passively by watching it, is the fact that when you're involved in that kind of killing in motion, sort of fluid sequence like that, that's all still in the control of the player. You know, so in other words, he's moving because in this case our demoist is moving forward on the thumbstick. If he wasn't doing that, he would be carrying out that execute in a static way, right? So it isn't that it happens automatically, it's that we allow the player to get to a point where they're able to chain these things together, and we actually support it with the inputs, with the animation, all that stuff that frankly hasn't been there up until now. So, and that's a hard thing to message, a hard thing to communicate, because you show it to people on screen, they go, yeah, that looks pretty, but maybe it's just scripted. No, absolutely not. Like, that's all dynamically and in real time, you know, being handled by the game as a result of the player's inputs. It's just that to get good enough to be able to do that, you have to play, right? So it's a function of mastery. It's why we say that it's a deep system. You know, there's a lot of replay value there. There's room to get better at it. All of these game systems by all of the content and all of the variety that you want to try to give players, and you're committing to delivering that. And that's what we're setting out to do. So if you want to play it as a ghost, you can play it as a ghost. And if you want to play it as a tank, you can play it as a tank.
Americans, always playing cowboy, huh?
What are you doing, Sam? Get your need out of there.
Are you really that thick? If you're here, mate, I'm already dead.
What the hell just happened, Sam?
Shot himself.
You've got company.
I'm bringing the UAV online now. Briggs, redirect to my current location.
Inbound now.
Watch for Splinter Cell Blacklist coming spring 2013 on Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 and PC.